This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Hello everybody, and welcome to God is Not Absent, a podcast in which we share stories of faith in the lives of young people today. This podcast is hosted by me, Apurva Patel-Kana, a young woman who has embarked on her own journey with God and is incredibly curious to know if God really is as dead or as absent as many Westerners nowadays seem to think so. And my guest this week is my very, very best friend in the whole wide world, Melanie Joy Aitken. Hello, Melanie.
Wow, full name introduction.
I know. I just thought I had to do that.
Fair enough.
I thought I'd share some exciting facts about you, Melanie.
Awesome.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Cool. So, number one, Melanie turned 21 yesterday. Yay.
Yeah, it's true. It's a fun day.
Yeah. How's it going being one day 21 years old?
Just the weight of the world's on my shoulders now.
Oh, yep.
No, not really. It feels the same, but it's kind of exciting.
Cool. Yeah, it's quite exciting because Melanie and I, we've known each other for 13 years. I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, who's counting?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite funny. We met each other at Riccarton Primary School. Melanie was sitting there with her friends and I was there alone. She
was a new student.
Yeah, I was a new student, and this was year 3. Year 2, year 3.
Year 3.
Yeah, and yeah, she was all popular and all smart and beautiful as always, and I really wanted to be her friend. And, well, God obviously answered my prayers because I'm your best friend.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so Melanie is really special to me because she's my best friend. I don't know how many times I've said that. But yeah, I just love her faith and how, as I said before, I was really attracted to her intelligence and how, just her popularity and all these really shallow surface level things. But the more I got to know her, I realized that it was her faith that was actually so special about her. And this was when I did know God a little bit, but not to the same extent that her and her family did. And yeah, it's just been a wild ride ever since. And I really wanted to have you on this podcast because I think I've gained a lot of wisdom from you. And I've gained a lot of wisdom from your family as well. They are super strong Christians and they just love God. And I thought it would be really cool if the people listening here could take part in a small bit of that. Yeah. And so yeah, I just want to welcome you to the show. And
Thank you.
I've said a whole bunch of things about you and I already, but did you want to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, man, what an introduction. I really hope I can live up to that high standard. Thank you for that. So I am a university student. I'm currently in my 3rd year of study. At the moment, I'm studying law and te reo Māori, but probably going to add some political science in there too in the next year or so. And I'm enjoying that. I think it's a pretty cool thing.
Awesome. So, Melanie, the first question I wanted to ask you, are you ready?
Yeah.
Is I wanted to know, what are your earliest memories of knowing God personally?
That's a good question. I think, as you've mentioned already, Apurva, I grew up in a Christian family, so my parents told me about God from a really young age, and I kind of always grew up knowing that God was real, and I think there's a story that my dad has told a few times to me that kind of, when I was quite young, I think he told me that, not everyone in the world believes in God. And I just found that so crazy. I was like, why wouldn't they? Like to me as a young child, it just seemed so obvious. I think I was always taught that, God was really loving and that he cared about us. And I think that was a really positive thing for me as a child to have. I think as a child, I didn't doubt God's existence at all. I always thought he was real, and I always thought that he was someone that I could go to for comfort and just kind of really rely on, which I think was really cool.
Man, I wish I had that as a child. And I know you as someone that is quite confident. And you're generally not too stressed out about life. You're probably the least stressed out person I know, aside from maybe your brother.
True, yeah.
But I want to know, how do you stay so grounded?
I think, that's a really important point that you've touched on there. I think, I'd have to say, honestly, it does come down to my Christian faith. I have a lot of trust in God, and I kind of have this life philosophy that if I honor God with my time, God will honor me. And to give some kind of extra context to that, I am generally a really busy person. A really great example of that is in 2020, last year, I was working about 18 hours a week and doing full-time university study. And on top of that, I had several other regular commitments to fit in. So it was a very busy year for me. At the start of the year, I was actually really worried I was going to get burnt out that year. I was like, I think I'm doing too much. Like, this is crazy. Why am I doing this to myself? But I kind of felt like I was doing what God wanted me to do. And maybe that sounds kind of strange to people who aren't Christian, but I guess it's the idea that I felt like kind of God had been showing me in a number of different ways, kind of whether that's through people I was talking to or just through prayer, and kind of feeling like God was answering my prayers, kind of where I should be investing time in my life. And so, I had a lot on, but I kind of felt like that was what I was meant to be doing. Like, that was what God was saying I should do. And so I kind of said, well, okay, God, like, if this is what you want me to do, I'll just have to trust you that this is going to work out okay.
Wow.
And it did. I think, there were a few pressure points, but actually I got through it. And I think it's quite interesting looking back because the busiest term of the year for me was the second term of university. And I had like an assessment due every week, and I was like, how is this going to work out? But in the, you guys, will all remember that around that time last year, we actually had a lockdown. And amazingly, all of my life commitments stopped. So suddenly there was all the time in the world to do the assessments that I had for university. And I guess it's cool because I think, I think of God, he is all-knowing and he kind of knows everything that's going to happen. So, I mean, obviously God knew that there was going to be a lockdown that year, that I would have all the time to complete my assessments, and so kind of I didn't really need to worry about it. So it was really cool, I think, for me to see how, I kind of trusted God that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it actually worked out. Like, I was fine, I didn't get burnt out, and I even managed to get like okay grades as well. So I was okay with that, so it was good.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you just felt like this was what God wanted you to do. Especially for non-Christian listeners, what is that like, that experience of hearing from God?
Good question. I think for me, it's never been like an audible voice in my head. That's never how I've heard from God. I think probably the strongest way I feel like God speaks to me is kind of through a sense of peace or uneasiness. So if I'm trying to make a decision, I will pray about it. I'll be like, hey God, like, this is something I'm struggling with. What do you think I should do? And I mean, I never feel like God is saying like, do this, it's nothing that dramatic, but it's kind of like, I think about it, I dwell on it, I maybe talk to some people around me, and I usually will start leaning towards one option. And the more I kind of think and reflect and pray about it, is I'll generally feel at peace about it. And if I'm heading in a direction that that probably isn't what God's wanting me to do, I'll often feel quite uneasy about it. Like, it'll make me really stressed and things like that. And so I guess I try to avoid the stress and go in the direction that I feel like is where God's prompting me, and kind of, I guess, through a sense of peace is where I feel that the most.
So I guess your faith also carries a lot of common sense in there. Like, you're asking the people around you, you're praying to God, you're reading the Bible, you're seeing what makes most sense to you. And it's not just something that, I don't know, you're looking for a sign in the clouds.
Yeah, no, not really. I think as well, sometimes I feel like God speaks real practically. Like, sometimes doors open, there's opportunities that we're able to have, and sometimes doors close. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I've heard other people talk about it as like, oh, the universe decided for me. And I guess for me, I think it's not the universe, it's actually God that kind of is controlling those options and different things. And sometimes as well, I think it actually doesn't matter what we do. Like we can choose option A or option B and it really doesn't matter. And God's okay with either option. But other times I think, there is a kind of a direction that God is prompting me to go towards.
Cool. So I guess what's most important is that you do trust in God throughout the process.
Yeah, and I think as well there's a passage from the Bible that I find really helpful, which I think I'd like to read out. So it's found in the book of Luke in chapter 12, verse 22, and the title of this section is Do Not Worry, and so I'll just read it now. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens, they do not sow or reap, they have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well." And so I guess a couple context things mentioned this guy Solomon. He was a king, so naturally he dressed pretty cool. I just want to kind of focus on that last verse. It says, "But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well." And I think kind of what I mentioned before, that's what I found, is if I trust God and if I put him first, then everything else kind of seems to work out.
Wow, that is so cool. And you've lived that verse out pretty much in your life.
Yeah. And I think as well, I mentioned I was really busy, and I think I want to say as well that a lot of that was through doing church things. So I'm very involved at my church. I run a kids after school program through my church. I'm also I work in a school through my church as well. And I guess there's a number of other things that I'm quite involved in, like with our young adults group, Bible studies and things like that. And so I invest a lot of my time into our church and into serving God. And I guess that's where I see God honors me, is I put a lot of time towards what he says is important, like through his Bible and kind of through common sense. But God seems to make everything work out. I am usually pretty level-headed. Like I don't generally get too stressed. I mean, sometimes there's obviously a little bit because that's normal. But I think most of the time I kind of feel quite okay about things, which is cool.
Right. So you talked a lot about how you put God first, you do things that God wants you to do. Do you ever feel like there are things that you want to do and perhaps that this faith is quite oppressive to what you want and doesn't align with your actual desires of your heart?
I think, that's a good question. I think, sometimes there are things that, in a sense, God asks us to give up because we don't have the time for it, or it's not good for us for whatever reason. I think sometimes at the time it can feel quite hard to give up certain things. Like an example is in high school, I was playing basketball for a couple of years, and then as I got older, the games got later, so it actually clashed with youth group, which is kind of where we got to hang out with fun teenagers and learn more about God. And I kind of chose to give up basketball because I was like, well, actually, I really value this time and space to go to youth group, so I'll keep doing that. And I mean, it was kind of a small sacrifice, but I think, the principle is that it was something I did want to do, but I was like, actually, I think it's more important that I'm giving this time to God. And so I think often at the time it can feel hard to not, I guess, to give up things we might want to do. But I think always in hindsight, looking back, reflecting on my life, every time I've had to make a decision like that, I've been so grateful for the decision that I have made and that I have put God first, because I really believe that God has the best plan for my life, that he kind of has some things that he wants me to do in life. That's honestly going to give me the most enjoyment and purpose and fulfillment in life that I could ever have. So what I want actually, what I think I want isn't actually what's going to be what's best for me. And so by kind of following God's plan, I'm just going to have, things are going to be so much better.
And I guess when we think about the future, I'm just noticing, again, such a confidence in you. And I suspect that when most people think about the future, things can seem pretty bleak because there are a number of issues in the world. There are things like COVID-19, climate change, racial tensions, the mental health crisis. There's so much brokenness in this world. And it can be really easy to feel disheartened about all of this. And a lot of people find it hard to hope during this time, and they cling on to hope in all these different areas of life that might not necessarily give it to them. And I was just wondering, do you have hope for the future? And, well, the answer is yes. But actually, where do you get that from?
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely mentioned a bunch of issues that are quite serious in our society, and yeah, there's definitely times that that I can think about the future and get really disheartened and feel bleak, because sometimes stuff just sucks. There's things that are really hard, sad, that are going on in the world, and I even think about New Zealand, like in the context of I guess the Māori population. Like, I am Māori myself, and I see that there's a lot of injustice that's happened against Māori in the past, and I think, I feel really sad about that. And I don't know what the solution is, but one thing that really reassures me is that God is real and he cares. He sees the hurt that exists in the lives of people, and he wants to do something about it. And so, I don't know when that time is or how it's going to happen, but I trust that God will be working towards that and using people to get there. So I find that, really awesome for me to kind of hold on to that hope.
Right. But I guess also all of this is based on the fact that God is real and that he does exist. So do you think, why are you so sure that God exists in the first place?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of reasons. As I mentioned before, I've made the decision to trust God on a number of different things, and I always feel like he's come through and never let me down. And there's stories that I've heard of people around me where God's really just transformed their lives amazingly. And I don't feel like I've had such a radical transformation because I've always known God. But I think God has revealed himself to me in other ways. I guess, another example I can think of is when I was a teenager, maybe 15 or 16, kind of like many other teenage girls, I had a number of insecurities and things I was really worried about. So kind of one of them was body image, and I know that's still such a big topic for a lot of people. I struggled with that for a while. I think there were times where I didn't like how I looked, and that made me really upset, and I had some really unhealthy ideas about myself and about how I looked. And looking back now, I'm just like, oh, what a waste of time, because I spent so much thought and time and just crying about myself or being upset about things. And I'm like, I really could have been doing more exciting things. And I think, there was a journey to come out of that. And I think looking to the Bible for truth really helped me out, because, God tells us that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. A lot of things, like God created me, he made me the way I am, and he wants me to look like this. He wants me to kind of be how I am. And I think, slowly that kind of restored my confidence in how I looked and how I was made, and just helped me to feel a lot better about myself. And I guess as well, there were times when I was really upset, I would often write poetry, because that's something that helps me to process my emotions. And there's one particular poem I can think of where I started writing. It was just things that I hated about myself.
Wow.
And by the end of the poem, there was such a shift of perspective. It was like, I was like, oh, actually, God loves me. God cares about me. God thinks I'm amazing. He wants me to be who I am. And just that, the radical shift of that perspective in such a short time, I think for me was really cool to see how God was kind of using my writing and just kind of putting his own good thoughts in my head to feel better about myself. And I think that's one way I think was a really powerful way that God was actually speaking to me and encouraging me and telling me I shouldn't be having these negative thoughts about myself.
Whoa. That was just so cool to hear. Well, I guess we're coming to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing all of that. And once again, I'm just so inspired by your faith, even right now. I've known you for so long, but once again, I'm just so inspired. And it's so beautiful to see just how God has been working in you. And just thank you for for coming here and sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I was wondering, for your final question, do you have a song that you'd like to share with us about God?
Yeah, I do. The song is called I Thank God by Maverick City, and this is a song I discovered a couple months ago at a worship night at church, which is just where we sing songs and reflect on who God is. And yeah, the song talks about kind of when you're in a really low place, maybe your soul is weary, you're really tired, that God is there, he picks you up and he kind of just, frees you from the burdens of what you're going through. And at the time, that was really meaningful to me because that's kind of a place that I felt like I was in. So yeah, it was a really cool song.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to listen to that. And I guess that brings us to the end of the episode. So thank you so much, Mel. It's been so inspirational to hear your story again. And yeah, I guess I'll see the rest of you guys next time. Thank you guys. Bye.
A place to hide this weary soul, this bag of bones. And I try with all my might, but I just can't win the fight. I'm slowly drifting, a vagabond. And just when I ran on the road, I met a man but to believe my doubts are burning like ashes in the wind. So long to my old friends, burden and bitterness. You can just keep it moving. Hey, no, you ain't welcome here. From now till I walk streets of gold, I'll sing of how you saved my soul. This way It's the spirit of prophecy. That means what he did for another, he can do it again. That means what he did for another, he can do it again. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. It's the spirit of prophecy. It's the spirit of prophecy. That means what he did for another, he can do it again. That means what he did for another, he can do it. So we rise up. Get up, get up, get up. Get up out of that grave. Get up, get up, get up. Get up out of that grave. Get up, get up, get up. Don't stay there. Get up out of that grave. Get up, get up, get up. Come on. Get up out and say, get up. Get up, get up out of that. Get up, get up, get up. Get up out of that grave. Don't stay there. Turn me around, place my feet on solid ground. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior, because he healed my heart, changed my name, forever free. I'm not the same. I thank the Master, I thank the Savior.